Hey, what's up? Glad you joined us for overtime today.
Hi, guys.
It's Janelle.
This is positive Janelle, and that's negative Nelly over there. Right?
Well, I'd like to complain just a little bit about this article called How to Complain Less. Now, in principle, is it good to complain yet less? Of course. Here's what they say. Life is not perfect. It never has been, never will be. It's not bad news. In fact, once we begin to embrace this truth, we welcome a great number of possibilities. Life is never perfect. So why do we continue to complain about its imperfections? You know, we complain about the weather, the traffic, the weeds in the yard, tight clothing, misplaced keys, late airplanes, the price of gasoline. We complain about our job or our lack of job, or our nosy neighbors or crying babies, or ungrateful teenagers. I feel like we get a pass on that. Lazy spouses.
Oh, man.
We have become a society too quick to complain. They say complaining is almost never a positive reaction to a circumstance. They relent, this person, say, well, there are times, of course, when notifying someone of an injustice is good and proper, but most of the time, they say it's rarely healthy to complain. Clearly, this was written by an optimist.
Really? You're not even going to agree that, like, most of the times we shouldn't complain? Complain. Let's define complain, because it's different to be like, to identify things and say, oh, let's work on this. So maybe we should define what complain is.
That's hard to do, number one. Number two, I think one of the dangers here when the optimist goes after the cynic is that, like, psychologically, talk to any counselor and ask them, say, hey, is it a good idea to take your negative feelings and bottle them up inside? Is that good? They're going to say, absolutely not. You're going to end up with physiological issues, psychosomatic problems. You're going to end up with depression, anxiety, right?
Are there better ways to deliver negative feelings you have?
I have a flat tire. I'm happy. I have a flat tire. I'm happy.
No, that's identifying an issue. That's not complaining. That's what I'm saying. You got to define.
So can Christians complain?
Complaining is, oh, look, the day's horrible. Look, I got a flat tire. That's complaining.
It is horrible.
It's a bad attitude.
I can't have a bad attitude for a minute if I have a flat tire.
Okay, y'all, what do you think? What's the question?
Can Christians complain?
Oh, my gosh, no. Because it's like, yeah.
Should we complain? You like that better?
Yes.
Should we complain?
Complaint is okay if it leads to correction. Thank you. Or leading to a resolution of that complaint. But what about when it involves another person? Because one thing, like if you're complaining because somebody else isn't doing something, you don't think there should be a line there? For example, a dad walks in and is like, oh, look at the dishes. There's so many dishes in the sink. It's like, okay, you can complain about that, or you could just wash the dishes.
What if you told your kids to do the dishes before they did?
Well, yeah. Hi, Callie. And Rob, please, Rob, can you bring some logic into the conversation?
Oh, I
know Rob doesn't complain. Beat you to it.
I bet Rob complains.
Mike says, I think it's the reason and intent behind the complaining. If it's ultimately for personal pride or selfishness or unrighteous judgment, then it's wrong. If it's for legitimate concern for someone's well-being or in a question to God because of lack of understanding, then there's a good outcome from it. But it should not be done to put someone down, which would be a lack of showing love.
Okay. You've seen the book of Ecclesiastes. The majority of the book of Ecclesiastes, correct me if I'm wrong, is he's complaining. Right?
Right.
About injustice, unfairness. Yeah?
Yeah.
So we know that complaining, and David, he is a poetic complainer. How long will you forget me, Lord? Forever?
Yeah, but somebody brought up during the show, they texted it and said, yeah, but when David would lament and complain, he wouldn't stay there. He would always finish by reminding himself of who God is and how faithful he's been. Complaining is just sitting there. Oh, God, you forgot me.
Yeah, the pattern for David was in his imprecatory psalms, as far as I can see it, is that he would complain or lament, or whatever you want to call it. and then he would acknowledge God's sovereignty. He wouldn't be defeatist. But like, what I don't want to do is tell someone, if you follow Jesus and you have a bad day at work, don't tell anyone. Bottle it up inside. You're a sinner if you complain about it. That's not how you feel.
Deborah has trouble listening. She said, overall, complaining leads to whining and is negative. It's also very, she's just saying, like, what's the purpose of complaining? And Trisha gave up complaining for Lent. Wow.
I don't have that much faith.
Oh, it's like, so, yeah. Sheila says, I think everyone needs to vent to a specific friend or loved one because, like Brian says, you need to release the angst. People should complain less, yes, but I think everyone needs to do it to a certain extent.
And that's ultimately my point, is what the optimist does is write an article that says, basically, really there's almost never a time when you ought to complain. And I think the healthier answer is not the cynical answer, it's the balanced one.
Yeah.
It's that, yes, we ought to complain less, but I don't want to tell everybody that pretty much every time you complain, you shouldn't be. Yeah. I'm not ready to say that, which is essentially what I get from this article, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you willing to go that far? Because you're essentially an optimist.
I am an optimist, but I do think there's balance. I don't like, and I've known people that have seasons where it becomes your MO. Like, that's all you see. And that's a real thing.
That's a problem.
I have a kid that's like that. This dude, like, and kids have seasons, but it's like, are you thankful for anything? Anything, you know? Nobody likes me. We don't go anywhere. Then you finally go to the zoo. It's so cold. Why are we here? It's like, oh my goodness.
Look at you complaining about your kids.
I know.
It's true though.
Dude, like some people you want to tell them. Like I've had to tell some people, if tomorrow we get a diagnosis in our circle of friends or family, you're going to look at today and be like, oh my gosh, I had nothing to complain about. Like sometimes you don't think like some people need to be like, can you stop complaining?
Well, yeah.
Are you grateful for anything?
I think if you take out all the words of the article and look at the headline, I can agree with the headline. How to like complain less.
Yeah.
But that ought to be our disposition. We ought to have fruits of the Spirit as the dominant part of our personality. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. That would be the positives. But I don't think that is telling us never feel upset, never complain about circumstance.
Right.
I don't think that's the point.
Philippians 4, in terms of when you catch yourself doing that, and it's directing us in terms of where to think. And it says, finally, whatever is true, Paul says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Yeah, it's good.
And it helps me sometimes when all I look around is like, I'm messing up here, I'm messing up here, and this is messed up. You know, even asking, like, whatever is true, like, is this truly messed up or am I having a bad day? You know, and just catching yourself, because I think you can get on that train if you're not mindful.
Well, and then I think
because the opposite can kind of just make you comfortable. Like, well, I got to vent. Then you're just constantly venting.
Yeah, that's not good.
Go ahead. Sorry.
That's not good. No, I jumped in. I think a lot of that we need to catch internally, like you're saying, where you're starting to get a negative thought, complaining in your head about something. It's I think a spiritual discipline to train yourself to do what Philippians 4 says, where you have to go, no, I'm gonna focus on the positive. I don't want to color right now. I've had a long day. My kid wants me to do this, but you know what? This is good for my child, and even though I don't want to do this, it's the right thing to do now. So you're turning yourself. You're not denying that you don't want to do something. You see? But you're turning yourself towards the spiritual gift of it.
Yeah.
The spiritual indicators. By the way, Steve Hawker.
Did you see his comment?
Yeah.
You saw it?
By the way, Steve Hawker is famous. He is
sir.
Morning talk show host in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Like billboards and everything.
So you should consider yourself to be very fortunate that you are on the same stream as Steve Hawker.
Look.
He said, did that insurance check come in to replace the camera that Janelle broke? Sweet. Yeah, finally. She's breaking everything.
Adrian, happy Wednesday, Adrian. Big weekend. Leah says, what if the original intent of the words wasn't for communication but for creation? Every time God spoke, he created according to his purpose. This is why Matthew 12:36 says, we will give an account for every idle word we speak.
So I want to know, Leah, it's a good point. Are you implying that Christians should not complain, ever? I'd be curious to know, and how you would be guided by that.
Deborah, you're so awesome, and you join us every morning. So, Deborah says, and just because it's in the Bible, it doesn't make it right.
True.
Thank you, because there's a whole lot of stuff that David did that's in the Bible that I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a mess. I'm not doing that.
Prescriptive versus descriptive scripture. Just because someone did it, like, it doesn't mean you have permission to do it too. I get it. But I'm not comfortable saying to a Christian, you love Jesus now. Everything is happy.
Yeah.
You can't complain. You shouldn't complain. And if you do, you're sinning. I'm not ready to go that far.
Yes.
Are you?
I am not, but I'm thinking of myself and other people close to me. And I would at least challenge him to say, can you at least change the tone? Like, tone matters. What's that word you use when you're like, everything's messed up? Like, okay, come on. Like, if you're going to vent, you know, like, at some point you got to catch somebody and be like, okay, everything's not messed up.
Right.
The whole world's not against you. I don't know.
Yeah, don't say...
Is that helpful? Or because sometimes you say, no, don't do that. Let people...
No, I think it's very helpful. Be specific.
Yeah.
And I've had to do it with my kids sometimes. Be like, everybody hates me. Okay, that's not true objectively, because what about Jimmy? Remember Jimmy? Well, yeah, Jimmy likes you, doesn't he? Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what are we really...
That's deep. You just needed one kid.
So, well, but what are we really upset about?
Yes.
There's a real thing in there that's worth expressing so we can work through it.
I like that.
Right?
I've done that in my marriage. Oh my gosh, I'm so horrible at this. I'll tell Lynn, our marriage is just messed up. I don't know, like after 20 years, he's like, Janelle. And then he'll like identify, we have this issue, we're working on it. And they're like, we're okay. Like, calm down.
That's exactly what I was saying.
You can do that, and then it sets the tone for, like you said, moving forward. If you think everything's messed up, goodness gracious, versus, no, this is where I have an issue. Leah says, David followed up every lament with truth. Amen. Don't just end on a negative note. Let it out, but then speak truth.
Okay, yeah, Leah, I like that a lot, actually. I'm glad you clarified that, because you're saying...
Girls,
what you're saying is let it out. Like, do it, but it's what are you going to do with it? You're going to sit in it, or are you going to say, all right, God, show me how to give you glory in this, show me how to work out of it. It's not wrong to just let it out. I think it's wrong it's wrong when you talk about how you do it, and then how you end it, perhaps. I like that.
Deborah, she says, if we complain all the time, how is that being a light for Jesus?
Well, see, I'm not saying complain all the time.
Okay.
What I'm reacting to is a person who wrote an article who said, quote, it's rarely healthy to complain, which is implying basically you should almost never complain. I'm not comfortable going that far. I'm not saying, no, you should complain all the time. I'm just not comfortable telling people this.
Yeah.
This is an optimist's warped view of reality. A cynic would write an article that says you should complain more. And they would be wrong.
Yeah.
But they would want to tell you, oh, come on, complaining is great, I love it, everyone should do more of it.
Yeah.
Isn't the truth somewhere in the middle?
And she reminded me of times that I found myself, you meet up with friends a lot, and then you find yourself all the time talking about how tired, how the kids are tripping, and I've had to catch myself like, wow, what am I saying about motherhood? Or even people listening, whether it's younger women or my own daughters. Even though in my heart I know motherhood's amazing, what's coming out of my mouth is different. What I'm saying is, oh, it's horrible, it sucks. So I like what she said about, are we being a light? Like you said, just kind of being mindful. And
it looks like my man Robert said, Brian, you couldn't have said it better yourself.
No.
You're right. Thank you, Robert, for telling me I'm right, Rob.
Rob's distracted. He's
Thank you,
working.
Rob.
Rob says, a phrase that I use often, can't complain, won't complain. For me, complaining constantly just is a waste of time. When I was a teen, I went to vent to a friend about my brother, and the friend stopped me and said he didn't want to hear it. Wow, for he heard me do it too much. At that point, I realized I was only complaining to be heard, and that it's okay to move on, especially when I started to be looked at as a complainer. Not a good look for any person who believes they're growing in maturity as a person and Christian. Man, deep brother.
I'm
That's
with you,
what
Rob,
I'm saying. Deep
but
brother. Thank you.
I'm just going to gently nudge you, Rob. Okay? Isn't expressing, like when you feel like complaining, you say, I can't complain. I can't complain. Isn't that a form of complaining? You're acknowledging you want to complain, but you won't do it?
There's actually a song,
Look
and
at
I don't
you.
think it
It's
says
called
that.
I Can't Complain.
Yeah. I can't complain. I mean, I'm so blessed. I can't complain. I won't complain.
But I think when someone is
Somebody
forced to
text-
express that, what they're saying is, I want to complain, and I would, but instead I'm going to say the phrase, instead of complaining, I can't complain.
Somebody texted something cool, and it was
like Brian is right on this?
No,
Is that
no.
No?
It was saying how, and maybe you guys have heard this, and this is to help, especially Lydia, I think it's Lydia. Yeah, because she's fasting from complaining or something. Is that how you say it? So somebody texted and said that complaining is kind of like complaining about being hungry with a loaf of bread under your arm. That's kind of what it is. True, dude. And the Lord looks at you like, dude, you are blessed. Like, our kids are exhausting, but like for the Lord to hear us complaining about how annoying they are, the same people that 20 years later are gonna be like, oh, I miss them. I'm just trying to,
So then a person breaks their leg.
David said you're right.
So a person breaks their leg, you should walk up and go, at least you didn't break the other one.
At least he got legs.
Right. But you see how that's like, I understand the bread thing.
Yeah.
But aren't there times legitimately when it's actually rude and insensitive to not allow someone to express negative feelings and try to force them to like minimize their problem? Like, yeah, I know your whole family died in a car wreck, but at least you didn't. At least you got Jesus. That's insensitive.
You would go as far, I'm sure, because of the Psalms, to say that we can complain to God himself. Like, we could literally, I can go to God and be like, oh my goodness, these kids are like annoying.
David did it very specifically. Paul did it. Paul said, Lord, please take this thorn in my flesh away, whatever that was.
So he wouldn't be like, you should be grateful you could be a mom. It wouldn't be like, you're not even big. Do you see?
Yeah, I don't think he goes, yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? I think he's the great comforter, but I think he wants you to turn it. Like you're talking about, and acknowledge his sovereignty and ask him to show you his presence in the midst of your suffering. Right?
Yeah, that's deep. Like the Psalm, he didn't stay there.
Yeah.
Kathy says, if Christians aren't honest that they have struggles, then those of us who do feel very isolated and depressed, I think you need one person you can be totally honest with. Complaining is being stuck.
That's good.
Deep.
That's good.
Kathy.
Yeah. Complaining
it is being stuck. So what's the opposite?
Complaining to get unstuck. Lamenting to get unstuck. And we talked before about the difference between complaint and lament. Complain is to express feelings of pain, dissatisfaction, or resentment, while lament is to express grief, to weep and wail, to mourn. It's subtle. It's a subtle difference.
Yeah.
But I think if your heart's disposition is to complain to get help, to try to move on, to move forward, to turn positive.
Or sometimes thinking through a problem, like, what am I going to do? Help me. And you're complaining.
But if your point is just for the sake of complaining, and then therefore you're stuck, Kathy nailed it.
Yeah.
Kathy nailed it.
You guys are amazing.
Wait, Robert responded.
Only if you're a cynic.
Wow, Rob. Wow. We'll just both move forward today. You don't have to say it. You don't have to say
You're
it.
awesome, Rob.
You don't have to say it.
I
know.
hope you go to men's conference. Are you going to men's conference?
He might be, but Rob, you don't have to say anything at men's conference. I'll know that you know I'm right.
You got to go to men's conference. You got to give Len some support because he got to deal with this dude with a mic. Sheila says, I might complain about the opposing viewpoint about the complaining article from today. Yes. Thank you.
Complaining about complaining?
Yeah, yes.
That's pretty good.
Man.
So,
some up here.
I think it was Lydia said something real nice to us. We're going to go back and read that.
Oh, yes.
It feels self-aggrandizing. We'll read that later. How about that?
Yeah, it's better. But I like the link or the way you're bringing it to mental health. And it is important to be mindful of it and not shut people. Because we talk about kids, but even I'm thinking about my husband. Sometimes as wives, we don't want complaining, or we're like, well, why do you, whatever they're complaining about. But to shut people down, that's not good. In the long run, I can see how you're saying it creates unhealthy mental.
Well, and it goes beyond that, and I'm a living example of that. It's something called a psychosomatic symptom. I learned it in psychology class and experienced it in real life. I had such high anxiety when I moved and changed careers and we had a baby. We had like all the stressors at once that I started getting like horrific heartburn. To the point I went to the doctor, prescribed medication didn't help. Had to go in for and I did a barium test where you swallow like radioactive stuff and then they take an x-ray. And then I went and had an endoscopy where they send a camera down your throat, put you into like a twilight sleep and look in there. And there was zero physiological cause for my heartburn. Zero. None. There's no reason physiologically that I should have heartburn. You know what it was? It was psychosomatic. It was me being anxious and internalizing my anxiety and pain was causing physical symptoms. That's what you do to someone. No one said this to me. Don't get me wrong, but when you tell someone they can't complain, they may bottle up their negative feelings, their fearful feelings, their concerns, and they'll bottle them up, and it could even become a physical symptom.
Okay, can I push back a little bit?
No.
I do a good job at it, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. We've had emails from women in relationships where the spouse complains a lot. So let's use that as an example. What do you do? Like, how do you accommodate it? Because there are people, or if you're in a season where you're complaining a lot and the person tries to accommodate it, it could drive you nuts. So are you just saying, okay, just listen to it? You can't just listen to it. You got to do something about it. Do you see what I'm saying? And is that reasonable? Is that a reasonable expectation?
Like what? Don't complain to me? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm asking, how do you accommodate a person that's in a season of complaining a lot? Are you just saying, just listen?
I think that's step one. Listen. And I think at the right moment, not at the moment they're complaining, say, you know, I love you and I'm worried about you. I've been noticing an uptick in the number of times you're really going through stuff and complaining about it. How can I support you? See, that's compassionate.
How do you
and it starts to address the
demands that are coming in?
What do you mean demands?
The house is a mess, or the kids such and such, or I've told you my dinner, whatever it is, constantly. You know, the expectation is satisfy my complaints.
Well, I think you have to address that directly. Don't you think?
And just...
with love and compassion.
So not so much stop complaining, you listen and then address.
And work it out.
Yeah.
But also I think it's fair to say to that person, your complaining is hurting me.
Yeah. Because you said one time, you didn't bring it up today, that for somebody like you, complaining is really not complaining. It's trying to make things better.
Yeah.
But isn't that relative? It depends on who,
I think
on
it
which
depends on
side
who you
you're
are. Yeah,
on
like
which side you're on. Trying to make things better in your perspective.
To me, you can't solve a problem until you express it.
Yeah.
And to identify a problem, you have to acknowledge it exists. And to acknowledge it exists, it sounds a little bit like complaining. Right?
Yeah.
But you can't fix a problem you won't acknowledge exists.
Yeah.
And so there is this problem-solving nature that forces you to actually have to complain to solve it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where I would say that.
Kathy says you give the person 5 minutes and then pray with them and then redirect.
That's good. Robert, again, agreeing with me. Way to go, Robert.
He's so smart today, right? Yeah, this is good stuff.
Great stuff. Hey, we got to keep rolling here, but it's been fun hanging with you. And overtime, a little quick announcement. Don't forget, we do have 2 announcements. Number 1, we have a limited number of additional seats that are available for walk-up purchase the morning of Walkworthy Men's Conference at Parkside Church on Saturday. It opens at 7:30 a.m. is when the doors open, so plan accordingly if that applies to you. Second thing will be Dr. Mark Jobe is going to be coming in studio with us for Follow-Up Friday, this Friday from 8 to 9, and I think we're going to try to convince him to stick around for overtime. So we may have the president of Moody Bible Institute right here.
Yeah.
Like, right here.
Yes. You guys are going to love him. He's amazing.
So,
and he's going to men's conference, too.
Yeah. Check it out, family. We'll see you mañana, they say, south of the border.
South of the border.